I'm co-host James Ash.
And I'm co-host Phil Scaife.
Welcome to the Business Lockdown. Welcome to today's episode. I'd like to welcome Wayne.Audsley from James Financial, independent financial advisors, and also co-owner and director of Temple Gym in Hull, East Yorkshire. Welcome, Wayne. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Welcome,
Thank
James.
you for joining us today. Thank you for joining us. Tell us what is going on in the financial world, Wayne. I mean, we'll get your backstory in a minute, but how do you advise people financially under these uncertain times? What's going on?
The advice for most people is to do nothing really. It is. You'd be amazing. The benefit of doing nothing could have to your circumstances. So, you know, people invest money, large amounts of money in the main, and the last thing they want is to lose it. So the temptation in situations like this, especially when they see the money falling in such a short space of time, is to panic, make a knee-jerk reaction, often reduce risk or even completely take risk off the table and put their investments into cash. So they're then doing the very thing they didn't want to do, which was lose money, because they're immediately crystallising the losses. So yes, it's scary times. Yes, the market's falling and people are seeing the money lose value. But it is at the same time off the back of a very, very, very good run in the markets for a substantial amount of years. So it is a very short-term blip, and it is just that, a blip. So, you know, it's just sort of stick your crash helmet on and, you know, ride through it and come out the other side. But it's unlike the financial crash sort of 12 years ago. The financial system is obviously in a good place at the moment, despite everything else that's going on. So whereas the economy will take a bit of a hit, it's a very short-term hit. But, you know, speaking to fund managers who we deal with, listening to what the government's putting in the media, looking at all the financial measures, it is going to be very, very short-term. So it's a case of just sit tight and ride it out, really. From our point of view, the clients we advise, there's not many, if any, that have actually had a direct impact in terms of the fall in value has created a financial issue for them, because of the way we look after them and advise them. We prepare for this kind of thing quite well. So it's quite good that we can sit and tell people to do nothing, because we can say it with good confidence that it will recover, but we can say it with confidence in the fact that we're prepared for this, so 2 years before it happens. So we're well positioned for our clients, which is quite nice to be able to have those conversations.
Yeah.
You know, because not everybody advises the same way we do.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So what's your background? How did you get into being a financial advisor? How did the journey start for you?
And this before Wayne goes into this, I sat with Wayne three years ago. Wayne, was it about 3 years ago?
A while back at the golf, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, when we had a meeting, and I remember it word for word because it's just so inspiring. And you
mean at K2 then? When we met at K2
we were at K2 and we had a meeting, and it was, I think the words were, your Brandsome boy has done well. I think that was kind of the way you say you're from Brandsome originally.
Yeah. But there's a few of them, you know, as we know, personal friends that we both know from that area who've gone on to do good things. So there's probably people who've done far better than me. But yeah, it's in terms of, you know, my entry to the industry was by accident. I remember having many manual jobs since leaving school, some great, some not so great, and I was never, you know, against working manually. In fact, I assumed I'd be a manual worker, you know, for the rest of my life. And it was only when I was about 23, I was working away and doing manual work at the time, and I hated being away from home, although the money was good. And I just remember speaking to one of my friends at the time, who back then we were all regular clubbers and nights out, going on nights out and stuff. And but he was sort of a bit of a sensible one. Well, Monday to Friday it was anyway. And so I spoke to him, and he was just, he did the job I do now, and said to us, don't you fancy having a crack at doing what I do? At the time, I didn't own shirts and trousers and stuff other than to get in nightclubs. I didn't own any clothes to work in an office, and nor did it ever enter my head really to go down that sort of career. But it was a really, really big pay cut. But at the time, thankfully, I lived at home with my grandparents, and I got paid to play football. So that sort of made up my money that I could use to live on basically whilst I trained. So I went from quite a well-paid manual job to an extremely low-paid job, working in an office, which is well out of comfort zone. And yeah, just with the intention of doing admin really initially. And it was only once I was in there and I asked, well, this admin job we're doing, what is it for exactly? And and then it was like, well, we do this job for the independent financial advisors. This is how it works. And then I just remember seeing like a newsletter that came in, and they had like a quarterly newsletter. I think there's about 1,500 advisors across the country, and I sort of saw the newsletter come in. And I remember this was only about 2 months before this. I was probably, sat on a building site doing manual work, and seeing sort of it had a top 10, advisor earnings for the quarter. And when I seen it, and I thought, well, hang on, that's is that a quarter or a year? It's pretty much what I'd earned in about 10 years. And so I thought, well, I want to do that then. How do I do that for a living? And that was it. So it was a case of, they said, well, there's a professional program you need to enroll on. There's years worth of studying and exams to take. So I was like, right, well, get me on it now. That's where I'm heading. And that was that. And I never looked back. Before I knew it, I'd done all my qualifications. I think 17 exams over the course of about 10 years in total. Had my moment where I went down to London, financial district, Cannon Street, to get my chartered degree, effectively, in financial planning, which was a real achievement. And because when you leave school, Brandsome School anyway, you're told you're never going to achieve anything. And there I am, sat with my degree outfit on and my hat, getting my photo taken with a scroll in my hand. So, yeah, bit of a journey, one I never expected to be in. But since I made the transition 15 years ago now, never looked back. Yeah, it's a lot easier sat in an office or at a client's home, having cups of tea and coffee and provided food and biscuits and these are nice people, compared to on a building site when it's freezing. It's a lot easier. It's a breeze really. But from a mental perspective, it does take its toll. It's going into this, I never thought I could get so tired sat doing what I do, but it just goes to show the amount of mental strain doing my job. You're as tired as if you were working on a building site at the end of the day. So it's mad really how you end up knackered exactly the same, but the difference in terms of what you've been doing each day is so different. Yeah.
Amazing story. And tell us, so how then into the Jinne industry, which we're seeing all over it. I imagine you guys are closed as everybody else is. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, we closed the day before. We closed on the Thursday, and then on the Friday the government came out and said gyms need to close. So we were closing anyway. So we'd done that on the Thursday. So then when we seen it announced on the Friday, we thought, well, okay, we was doing the right thing in the first place. Now, thankfully, because of the government's recent announcements for small businesses, we can put our staff on the furlough scheme, which means for the next 3 months, instead of having no pay, the government will contribute to 80% of their wages. So we still have to pay the wages. The government doesn't pay it. We still have to fund it. And then eventually the government will announce the finer detail of the scheme, some kind of online system for us to claim back the pay, effectively. So the staff still get paid 80% of the pay for the next 3 months, which is great. The gym will also benefit from the government grant scheme, so we should reopen, at a time when it's right, ready to go again, and see our members coming back through the doors, which is good. So we would have liked to have celebrated our first year anniversary a lot better than this, but I think we opened on I think we open on 13th of May, so you never know. You never know what could happen between now and then. It'd be nice to open for our first anniversary, but
have a second opening.
Yeah, it remains to be seen, but I'm sure we'll celebrate either way when we get to open again. Yeah, 'cause it was a long slog getting it open, and the first sort of 10 months of trading, we've learned a lot because going back to sort of lads from Branzone who've done well. One of the lads in particular who I set up the gym with is exactly the same situation. Grew up with his grandparents, same as me, same age as me, went to school on Branzone, exactly the same, left school with nothing qualification wise, and now he's extremely successful himself. So it was a drunken conversation one night at a Tyson Fury meet and greet boxing event, where there's an infamous auction regarding a belt that I won't mention because he'll get into trouble. But yeah, we at that.
I know this story as well. I do know that story.
Mate, you know the story. So yeah, that was that. Anyway, during that evening, we just got chatting and said, very similar backgrounds, very similar journey to where we were at that point. And we said, why don't we look at doing something together? And that's when he mentioned the gym. Had a few sober conversations a few days after, and then agreed to go into it. I sort of joined it right at the end. Don't get me wrong, he did all the legwork in it, but it was just sort of an opportunity to get involved and do something a bit different to what I normally do for a living, and just to diversify, my investments really.
I like the way you stress test the idea there. So it starts off drunk,
yeah,
and then it's a sober, and if it still makes sense when you're sober, it's a good idea.
Well, exactly, yeah. If every idea you had when you were drunk you followed through, I doubt you'd have much success. So it's good that I woke up the next day and thought, did we have that chat? Yeah, we definitely did. Although I didn't. That was later in the day, because the first thing I thought in the morning was, did he really pay that for that belt in the auction? But he definitely did. And then after that was like, right, yeah, we also had a chat about the gym, and so it was good how it came around, and it was quick, but it was a decent decision really. It's been interesting, and I think we're just still at the start of the journey, and hopefully we can reopen and prosper in what is a great area of Hull really.
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, there's a really good example there about aligning yourself with a like-minded individual, and a huge part of why we're doing this, while we're recording interviews for the business lockdown, is to not only for ourselves to align with like-minded people, but also for the community to build and support one another. And with that in mind, Wayne, what you're experiencing at the moment, what would you advise people out there, whether that's from within your industry or just within business in general? I mean, what are you experiencing and finding some solutions out there, and any way to instill confidence to people?
Yeah, so there's loads of different questions with loads of different answers there. So what I would advise, so I was just trying to make mental notes as you were going through, and then you kept adding to the list. So I'll do as best I can. So yeah, just businesses. I mean, look, it depends on the size of the business, doesn't it? Nobody who owns a big, large, successful business needs any advice from me at the minute. But the small businesses, as obviously we are, it's to take advantage of all the government help that's out at the minute. So the furlough scheme, as I've mentioned, we've used it for Temple Gym. You have to pay staff, of course, but you will be able to claim 80% of the staffing costs back off the government when they announce the scheme, which is probably going to be sometime in April. So I'd imagine back end of April, you would be able to claim what you paid in March, and then April, May, on an ongoing basis. Again, the business rates, companies claiming small business rate relief are entitled to the £10,000 grant from the government. And I think the only criteria from what I can see is if you qualify for small business rates relief and you're an active trading company, you'll get a £10,000 grant. I don't think there's any other criteria to it. So it's very, very, very good from the government. And that, in a sense, will help small businesses. It won't help all of them. There's going to be casualties. That's unfortunately the way things work. They can't rescue absolutely everybody. And it's a real shame if people do go out of business. I know the self-employed, that doesn't help them really, because it's all around businesses that. So, but from what I gather, They've initially mentioned them allowing to claim universal credit, but obviously it's nowhere near enough at 94 quid a week to cover the self-employed's income. But only seeing the news about an hour ago, I think the Chancellor is ready to announce some measures for the self-employed today. So hopefully there's something a bit more for the self-employed to be happy about. But again, there's so many plates to spin on the government side. They can only do so much, So yeah, they're doing all they can. So from self-employed and business owners, it's just using everything the government is providing you with, and hopefully it's enough to keep trading and keep your business going. And if it isn't, then that's a real shame. From a personal point of view, again, review everything you've got. Take the time while you're sat, at home, self-isolating, and ideally being 2 meters away from your family. Just sit there and write down everything you've got. Look at life insurances you've got. Assuming you've got them. If you haven't, then right now is if this isn't a warning that everybody needs life insurance or health insurance in one way or another, then I don't know what is. So if you have got it, review it. If you haven't got it, start putting some in place. It's very straightforward. Look at your finances, see what you're paying, what you can cancel, what don't you need, what's a luxury, and do that. And then from an investment and pensions perspective, if you're already invested, do nothing really, because it will recover. Don't panic. Don't sell the money down, because assuming you're young enough, to let it recover, you've got years to go before you can access it. So why would you panic now? If you've planned properly, then the fall shouldn't impact you as much, but it depends on obviously your planning there. But just get advice, because we see, not that often, but now and again, people who don't want to pay for advice. They want advice, but they don't want to pay for the advice, so they do it themselves. And then you often have them come back to you saying, this is what we did, and they've made a big mess of it. And it's like, if you'd have just paid a bit of money, that you probably didn't want to pay, you wouldn't have fallen into that trap. So I had somebody only the other day contact me because they wanted advice a few weeks ago, actually, and said they needed investment advice, and they'd invested £30,000 themselves online through a portal after doing a Google search, which was now worth 5,000 quid in the space of about 4 months, I think it was. So I said, why do you need advice now? I mean, what can be done now, sort of things. And it was a case of, well, I just need help trying to get any money back. Got some basic information, quick Google search, and they'll never see any of that money again. And I said at the time, why are you seeking advice now? Why didn't you get advice at the time? Why did you do it yourself? Because it was quite clear they had no idea what they'd entered into. And what they had entered into was a scheme for sophisticated investors. So they should never have been anywhere near it. And their answer was they didn't want to pay for financial advice, which would have probably cost about 500 quid on that kind of money. And but in saving 500 quid by not paying for advice, they had £5,000 left out of 30,000 quid in a short space of time. So if you'd have paid the advice, that would never have happened in a million years. So it just goes to show that if you pay somebody to do something, yes, it's money you have to pay out, but you will get the right advice, and you won't have problems like that, because they clearly couldn't afford to lose 25,000. But they had, and I said to them, you'll be lucky to see any of the 5,000 that's left as well, because of the scheme you've entered into. So, just if something like that, I don't understand why people wouldn't pay, because it's your financial situation, it's your financial livelihood. You've done a lot of hard work to earn that money, probably, and probably paid tax on it to get it there. So to then just not want to pay a fee for a professional to do the right thing and give you the right advice is madness, really. But at the same time, we understand people's perspectives on paying for something which they think they can do themselves. But that's why we go to mechanics and plumbers and joiners, and when we need solicitors, when we need to do something we're not trained to do ourselves. So, but yeah, it's amazing the amount of risks people will take with their own money to avoid paying, a fee for somebody to advise them. It's mad, really.
Well, it's like good advice. I mean, you can call it advice, but it's kind of more like an insurance policy, isn't it?
Yeah. Because if anything goes, if someone pays me for advice and I advise them and it goes wrong, then it's up to me to sort it. And if I can't, I'm paying compensation to somebody. As you do it yourself, then it's on your head, isn't it? And realistically, like I said earlier on in the conversation, it took me about 10 years and 17 exams to sort of get to that point of knowing what I was doing. So to somebody who has never done any of that and they don't work in our industry and they've got no knowledge of it other than they'll read one or two websites, it's and then base the decision on that. Well, there's so much more to it that they're just not considering. They just look at the very basic stuff they see on the internet and think, I'll go with that, or what the mate at the pub said, or someone we work with done this. And I mean, the amount of people that rang me about Bitcoin a few years ago, should I invest in Bitcoin? And it was like, no, definitely not. Oh, well, my mate sent this, my mate sent that. I said, well, your mate probably invested when it was a good time. So at the time of speaking, it had gone up about 5,000% in value. So I said, why would you want to buy something that's gone up 5,000%?
Yeah.
Wait for it to crash, because it will, and then buy it. But when it then did crash shortly after, no one rang me to say, should I buy it now? So it's mad, really, that people want to buy something whilst it's worth a fortune, but not when it's the right time to buy it. And that comes right back to what we was just discussing. What would you advise people to do now? People already invested in the market, do nothing, let it ride out, it'll recover. But people who are sat on cash to invest, put it in as quick as you can. Because it's only going one way from here.
Do you there's a correction round the corner at some point? Is that?
Well, so the market's fallen. I mean, look, the markets is quite a loose term, really. There's many markets around the world, but generally speaking, stock markets and the main stock markets around the world have seen falls in the last 4 or 5 weeks of sort of 20% on average. Some less, some more. But that would sort of be the average fall in markets of recent weeks. So, nothing like that has happened since the financial crash 12 years ago. So we've seen a big fall, a big correction. And what we've seen in the last 7 to 10 trading days on the markets now is it's pretty much gone sideways. So that tells you with the panic and fear has gone out of the market. The people who sell and knee-jerk or get worried and fearful have sold and gone, then it goes sideways, which means you've sort of hit the bottom, right. or thereabouts. We're seeing fairly wild swings in the markets each day, but we are generally going sideways at the minute. So realistically, unless anything new comes out we don't yet know about, you should start to see the market recovering, and once it starts recovering, that's just obviously the start of that process. But once the restrictions are lifted, people start to go back out to the pubs and the bars and the cafes. People haven't been able to go on holiday in the first half of the year. They're all going to be booking flights and holidays here there. So the second half of the year is going to be manic, really. And so assuming that all takes place and all the government financial measures they've put in place come to fruition, then you should see a very, very steep recovery, just as quick as the downturn. The upturn will be just as quick, which is why we're telling people don't come out of the market now, because at any given time it could just set off and you're too late to get back in at a decent price. But as far as investing cash right now, there hasn't been a better time to do it for many years. So it's definitely a great time to be putting cash in at the minute.
Yeah, I've got a few friends of mine have been looking at trying to invest in some of the sort of like the biotech companies, the ones that are on the back of the vaccines or the ventilators or whatever the equipment or the medicines are. What's your sort of like feeling towards that? I mean, is that the sort of thing you're looking at, or is that the sort of thing where it's a bit too flash in the pan? Or
no, we have. It's got to be down to the client's risk appetite. So certain clients would like the returns that those kind of investments bring, but they don't necessarily like the downturns on those kind of investments, because they can swing 50% in any given year. So it's only for the people who've got the stomach to do that and the nous to be able to do it, I suppose, and just have the capacity to take that risk as well, though. So it's all well and good wanting a good return, but are you happy to take that level of risk? And if it doesn't go the right way, can you afford to lose that money? So there aren't a massive chunk of our clients that are in that kind of thing, but we do have clients who are absolutely invested in biotech. Rather than pick specific companies, we pick investment funds. So the fund is a pooled investment that will buy many different biotech companies. But yeah, absolutely, it's something I'm recommending at the minute. And my own personal money, my own personal investments in my pension, my investments and my kids' money is definitely going into biotech companies. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The kids' money's going in, so that's
everything's going in. Everything's going at the minute. I've got any cash I've got. I've literally emptied every cash pot I have in the bank, and it's invested because it's a great time to be investing. Fearful time to be investing, but the best time to be investing we've had for quite some time.
Yeah. So obviously you've had a shift of sort of attitude to where you're investing your money. Only subtle, just different funds, I guess. You're still very much in stocks and shares. The gym is closed at the moment, mothballed, waiting to reopen. Is there anything that you're doing new or different in these times that you weren't doing before, other than those things?
From a business perspective, I mean,
not just business. You've just alluded to the fact you've got kids there as well. So I imagine homeschooling now is also something.
Yeah, so the kids are at home, pestering the wife all day. I still come out to my office. I'm not in contact with anybody. I jump in my car. I get to my office in Beverley, I walk through the door and I'm in the office by myself. So I'm more isolated here than I would be at home. So I don't go out during the day. I stay in the office, I get back in my car and I go home. So I'm doing it safely and wisely. But yeah, from the children's perspective, our eldest was expected to take his exams this year. So that's not happening now. So that's a bit of a surprise to him.
Yeah. Is that year 11 exams?
He's year 11, yeah. So he's just left school early, which he's very happy with because he wasn't the biggest fan of schooling. But he was looking to take his exams in the next few months. So he's now been told he's not taking them and he's left school a few months early, but he can't go out and do anything. So he's like happy he's left, but not so happy he can't move out the house anywhere. And only 2 weeks ago, he sold his PlayStation 4, which hadn't gone down well. So he's
he didn't time that market.
No, he definitely didn't. No, definitely sold it a week or two too early. But yeah, so I think he's tidied his room yesterday. So that's how bored he is. But other than that, I've got 2 younger girls, and they're just at home. My wife will be doing her bit to get them to do the work that the school have presented. But at the same time, it's got to have a bit of a break as well, haven't you? So they'll happily sit and do classwork for the teacher at school, but if a parent asks you to do it, it's like, I'm just watching a video on YouTube of somebody opening toys and stuff. They watch some real random stuff, but and then they'll eventually get around to it. But so from a family perspective, we're quite an active family, and we're normally out and about. So it's a bit weird for us, just sat in and around the house. But then I suppose the bank balance hasn't taken so much damage, so there's swings and roundabouts.
You can maybe afford the new PlayStation for him.
Yeah. Well, not quite. Well, he's left school now, so I said to him, if you want anything now, you need to get a job and start paying for it, mate. So get out there. Yeah.
Under normal circumstances, Wayne, what you spoke about that you were surprised how tiring your office-based job is. Under normal circumstances, I'm curious, how do you recharge the batteries? How do you ensure that your mental health is in check? Your focus is optimized. What outlets do you normally have?
Plenty of them. So I go to gym 3 times a week. I always go in the morning before I start my day. So I'll normally sort of do a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. So go to the gym, do my workout, and then start my working day from there. But I have 2 days off. In addition to that, I've got a Liverpool season pass, which is sat in my drawer at the minute. I'm desperate for this league season to crack on again so we can finally lift the title. So it's like we've waited 30 years, a few more months won't hurt. So I'm very, very keen to see the league season start again so we can finish the last 9 games and collect the trophy. So that's an outlet. And but I've run a kids football team as well, so that obviously keeps me busy. yeah, it can be a bit more trouble than it's worth sometimes, that, but it is an outlet nonetheless. And then yeah, you know, I'm quite active in terms of seeing family, doing stuff with the wife and kids. I play golf, not very well, as you know. So yeah, plenty of outlets to get my mindset back in order and make sure it's not just work. So yeah, I do have a decent balance.
Phil normally asks at this stage, are there any authors, are there any books that you know, if you're into reading books, are there any books that spring to mind? Or I'm more into like online coaches, you know, watching life and business lessons. And
you know what? I often see these things like you're doing now, and when you see people who've been interviewed and stuff, and they always rattle off books and authors and things they do. But I'll be honest, no. You know what? I haven't read a book since I left school.
Wow.
I never. I mean, I think I read Of Mice and Men and Romeo and Juliet when I was in my last year of school, probably to take an exam on it at some point. Other than that, no. I tell a lie. I read Jürgen Klopp's autobiography about 2 years ago because I was on holiday, and I just had it to read around the pool. Bravo 2-0 by Andy McNabb. So yeah, because that was in the drawer in the hotel we're staying in. So no, I don't read. The only things I read are just stuff to do with my industry. So I'll read industry magazines and industry articles to keep a breadth of what's going on in the world, and so I can, you know, be on point with my advice to my customers all the time. Really, that's the main focus of it. If I'm going to read anything, you know, I read enough at work, right? You know, so but yeah, I'm not going to come up with something and say, oh, I've heard of this author and I read this books. I don't. I genuinely don't. And I don't, like I say, I don't listen to any you know, mindful podcasts or deal with life coaches or anything like that. Yeah, I've just never felt the need to. I seem to be sort of quite content with what I'm doing, and it all seems to be working quite well, to be honest. So yeah, no, I ain't got no sort of quite chic answer for you there. So yeah,
it's actually refreshing from my point, because I'm the same as you, but I will listen to. I found myself really benefiting from multitasking. So if I'm washing the dishes or I'm cleaning up or going for a run. I benefit to be listening to podcasts or seminars and stuff, because I just feel I'm up on what I'm doing.
Yeah, I do a fair bit of driving in the car, but again, I have podcasts on, but it'll be more. I'll either have music on really loud, screaming my head off to it, or I'll have a podcast on about like financial stuff, or boxing or football, really. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up, Wayne, where can people find you? Have you got a website?
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn. I don't know what else to tell you other than I'm on LinkedIn, and you type my name in and you find me. Don't ask me what my my username is. I ain't got a clue, but just type me in, you'll find me. We've got a website which is jamesfinancial.co.uk. So we've got a nice website for you to look at on there. It's got our contact details on if you need anything. So yeah, that's the main two ways to contact me if anybody needs to. So yeah, that's it.
And the gym and Temple Gym is a website.
Temple. God, you're testing me now. Just Google right.
We'll put it in the link.
Listen,
don't worry, we'll put it in the link.
Google Temple Gym Humber Street, and it'll be there.
We'll put the website links and social hooks in the post anyway, mate. So people can be
but Temple Gym, they're on the website, and we've got Twitter, Facebook, Instagram as well. Somebody else deals with that. I'm not savvy with that kind of stuff, as you know. So one of the other owners of the business sorts that lot out, and is quite good at it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today, Wayne. It's been
no problem.
You on board, and yeah, you'll have helped and supported thousands who will be watching these videos. So much appreciated, and wish you the best.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time, Wayne. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye bye. Thank you so much for joining us on the Business Lockdown.
Please comment, like, share and subscribe to help build our global community.
We look forward to seeing you all soon.